Week 10 matchups, going over every single game, breaking down all the stats, details, injuries, weather, DFS, props, NFL picks. We're going to cover it all. Follow me on X at Fantasy Savvy. Make sure you guys are liking, subscribing to the show. Appreciate everybody joining us tonight. Jump in the comments, ask anything you want regarding Week 10. We just saw an absolutely horrific game, especially for fantasy football purposes. Brock Bowers getting just 3 targets. Bo Nix having a very bad fantasy game. So coming in as the QB6 on the year, rough game for him. So we're going to get into all of it. Again, appreciate you guys. Follow me on X at Fantasy Savvy. Like, subscribe, share. If you haven't subscribed already, I really appreciate it. Come back on the other side. We'll recap this Thursday night game. We'll get into every single game, every single fantasy relevant player for Week 10. Weather, injuries, stats, NFL picks and props. Fantasy Savvy on X. Let's go. And we are back. I just got to start doing this show earlier, but it's hard on Thursday because I'm watching the game and I can't do it before the game. But I am going to add a DFS show, I believe, after Thanksgiving, probably either Friday night or sometime Saturday. I'll go earlier. And that's why we could catch some of you East Coasters. Here we are, 12:03 in the morning here, early Friday morning on the East Coast. And we just saw the Broncos beat the Raiders 10-7. The Broncos get another close win. I mean, their offense looked absolutely pathetic tonight. Bo Nix did not play well. He was missing throws left and right. Sean Payton's offense looked like, he didn't trust them at times. All these dinky dunk passes. I mean, the Raiders looked like they had a pretty good idea of what they wanted to do. Cortland Sutton was kind of nowhere to be found. He didn't do much tonight. Just 3 catches for 24 yards. Troy Franklin gets 5 for 40, gets into the end zone. So the Troy Franklin over a Cortland Sutton narrative lasts another week. But, we've seen this quite a few times from Bo Nix and the Broncos offense this year, where they just look stagnant. They look very uncohesive. Nix is missing throws left and right. His deep ball doesn't look good. So, he kind of did this last year and then he kind of turned it on, towards the end of the year. And, now we're in week 10. So, he still has some time to turn it around, but this is the second year in the system. It does feel like defenses are starting to figure out this Peyton scheme a little bit. And, he tries to really scheme it up as great as possible for Nix. All these play action rollouts where the guys are all rolling the same way, these little fullback flat passes all the time. And these, motion, as we saw, there was a pass late in the game where Troy Franklin was screaming in motion, running under the line and came through, was wide open. And, a lot of screens, a lot of design running plays. We saw that in the Giants game late when they had all those points in the fourth quarter. And Peyton was scheming it up. He wasn't really able to scheme it up too well tonight. Credit to the Raiders defense. They actually brought it tonight. Actually, looking before the game, I think they've only allowed one 100-yard receiver on the season. Something the Broncos need to do, in my opinion, is get Pat Bryant more involved. We saw this guy have a 43-yard catch early in the game on a crossing route. And then after that, it was a bunch of screen passes, like run. Nothing was working for this Broncos offense. So Pat Bryant, man, I think he can give them a little life. I think it's about time they inject him, give him some more playing time. I know Marvin Mims was out for 2 games in a row. This is kind of the opportunity to get him a little bit more involved. And we saw, 43, he has that explosive ability and he has that big frame as well. Now, Nix obviously has to play better. I think Peyton needs to scheme it up a little bit better as well. But the Broncos keep skating by. They keep getting all these close wins. Against the Texans 18-15, the Giants at 33-32, against the Jets 13-11. So, they kind of did this last year a little bit too. But hey, I mean, they keep winning. That's all that matters. It gives them more time to work on their game and get better. They certainly have the talent. We've seen Knicks play better football than this before as well. But for fantasy purposes, just a bad day. 16 of 28, $150, 1 touchdown, 2 picks, only -2 rushing. I mean, he's not even giving me the rushing yards in this game. So that's another, very, very frustrating thing. Something you expect Bo Nix to do a lot more of. Not running a ton this year. His highest total of the year was 48 yards against the Giants. After that, against Dallas, he had -1. Against Houston, he had 36. And then tonight, -2. So I think if you're Peyton, you want to get some more design runs. We saw that work in the Giants game, and he ran for 2 touchdowns. So, I think they got to do a better job. They got the Chiefs coming up next week. That feels like a definite loss, the way they're playing. So we'll see. Their defense obviously is very, very tough. That could be a low-scoring game. But bad game for Bo Nix, fantasy-wise here. And Cortland Sutton, Troy Franklin salvages a touchdown. Want to see more Pat Bryant. Evan Ingram is not doing anything. He's been a disappointment this year. I thought he'd be a better pickup for them, more of a contributor for them as well. Probably better when they're, way down in games and they have to pass more. J.K. Dobbins gets 18 carries, 77 yards, 4.3 yards per carry. At one point, it looked like he might have possibly left the game with an injury, but kept working his way back. 1 catch for 7 yards. R.J. Harvey, he's been getting in the end zone of late. You maybe have flexed him in some spots. I did. I got some buys. I got some team running backs with injuries. Teams with running back injuries. I used them in like 3 or 4 spots. Again, I'm in like 50 leagues, but not good. Not good. 4 carries for 9 yards, 2 catches for 9 yards. You'd like to see get him a little bit more involved. Get him, on some drag routes or screen routes. Like, I don't know. Give him some more carries. Give him some more tosses. Dobbins played admirably tonight. 18 carries for 77 yards, but you'd like to see them give Harvey a little bit more, like some of these tosses, maybe see what he could do. But they trust Dobbins, obviously, and we'll see what happens. But bad game fantasy wise for RJ Harvey. Not even that great for Dobbins. I mean, he gives you 8 points, so that's pretty crappy too. But on the other side of the ball, Brock Bowers, after going nuclear last week, 3 touchdowns, 12 catches, 97 targets, 3 targets this week. They came out actually targeting Michael Mayer more in this game. 3 catches for 22 yards. He actually had more targets than Brock Bowers, which is just ridiculous. The leading receiver tonight was Tyler Lockett, who just joined the team recently. Obviously has the history with Geno in Seattle and Pete Carroll in Seattle. 5 for 44. Again, 6 targets. Trey Tucker, he had a little bit of a rough game. He actually had a touchdown called back on a legal pick. 2 for 28, 3 targets. Ashton Genty, 19 for 60, gets into the end zone early in the game, catches 3 passes. So not, you'll take it fantasy-wise, not terrible. He did have a drop that led to an interception. That was not good. Jack Betch, we're all kind of wondering, is Jack Betch going to emerge with the trade, the Jacoby Myers trade? And it's been Tyler Lockett 2 weeks in a row now. Has that stronghold, and they were even using Dante Thornton over Jack Betch a little bit. We haven't seen Dante Thornton the past couple of weeks. Dante Thornton, beautiful pass, actually, probably Geno's best pass of the day down the sideline, and Thornton just dropped it. So the Raiders kind of thought he was the baby Randy Moss, similar to the baby Jordan, Harold Miner. That's how he's kind of performing. not to the Randy Moss expectations at all. Big fast receiver, dropped this right in his hands. Beautiful throw. So he's looking more like the baby MVS than anything. Again, Brock Bowers is the story here. I mean, it's just hideous. But you'll take it. I mean, at least he's back, and he had a monster game last week. So if you're in points leagues or You get rewarded for points. That certainly helps you. But this week was a disaster. That's not going to help you get a win for sure. And it was good to get Brock Bowers in some of my fantasy lineups last week, and not so good this week, especially when we're 5 weeks away from the fantasy playoffs. Now 4 weeks left for Brock Bowers. Geno Smith, 16 of 26, a $143, no touchdowns, 1 pick. Had a very good game last week, his best game of the year. He was hobbling around. I think he hurt his quad. He left the game a couple times. He was getting heavily pressured. Got sacked 6 times tonight. And, early on, it looked like their offense was kind of fluid. And then, he started missing throws, started getting pressure. There were some drops, some touchdowns called back. Again, he had a touchdown call back to Trey Tucker. Game looks a lot different. And also, if Thornton catches that bomb, game looks a lot different as well. And maybe if Gentry doesn't drop that pick. Daniel Carlson missed a field goal to tie this game, to put it into overtime, which would have been nice for us fantasy football players out here. But overall, just another dud of a Thursday night game. We've had some good Thursday night games, but everyone, we've had a lot of these over the years where these just fantasy depressing Thursday night football games that are absolutely hideous to witness, and this was surely one of them. We are joined by Lucic, 1208. What's up, buddy? He says, yo, bro, I traded Amon-Ra, George Pickens, and RJ Harvey for Ladd, Saquon, and Worthy. What do you think? What are you thinking? This is my first year of fantasy. Well, congrats, man. I started playing fantasy football when I was 15 years old. Now I'm 43, so it's been a while. But hey, that's great, man. And I'm sure you're having a lot of fun with it. Keep coming back, and we'll be here all year, man. I'll help you out. Lucic 1208 says, yo, bro, I traded Amon-Ra, George Pickens, and RJ Harvey for Ladd, Saquon, and Worthy. First year in fantasy. So Amon-Ra, George Pickens, and RJ Harvey. So Amon-Ra for Ladd, George Pickens for Worthy, and Harvey for Saquon. So obviously you get the big running back upgrade, but you take a downgrade going from Pickens to Worthy, and you take a downgrade going from Amon-Ra to Ladd. But it's, Ladd's going to be nice, and you're picking up Saquon. RJ Harvey, we just saw it tonight. He didn't do much, and he's still behind Dobbins. When you got Saquon Barkley, who has a pretty nice schedule down the stretch. So, Worthy should have some better games. Since Rice has been there in the lineup with them, he hasn't been productive. But that could change again. This is only his second year in the NFL. That could change as we go on here. But I think you made a pretty good deal. You got Ladd back. You pick up Saquon, which is a huge upgrade over RJ Harvey. So, and running backs are hard to find. So that's a really good pickup. I think you did a pretty good job there, buddy. All the best this year. Thanks for joining the show. All right, let's get into the games. Again, we're going to break down every single game tonight. And we're going to start with the Germany game. We're back to these freaking 9:30 European games. And it's going to be Falcons versus Indianapolis Colts. DeForest Buckner, Colts D tackle, looks like he's going to miss this game. That is good for Bijan Robinson owners. Colts have been pretty stingy against running backs. Bijan, slowing down a little bit of late. Colts coming off a game where Daniel Jones turned it over, 4 or 5 times against the Steelers. Supposedly, they were taking away his first read. But there was a lot of tip passes, and they were kind of covering those passes underneath. They weren't letting him get all those rollouts. First of all, they stopped the run. That was the key. And we've seen a lot from Daniel Jones where he's rolling out untouched, with guys wide open. He's had great protection all year. So he was sitting in the pocket, trusting his protection because it's been immaculate all season long. And it just wasn't there last week. He was heavily pressured. He fumbled the ball several times. I think lost 2 fumbles. Fumbled at 3, lost 2. threw a couple interceptions as well. So it was a disastrous game for him. So will he bounce back here in Germany against Atlanta? Who, Michael Penix, one good game, one bad game, one good game, one bad game. Drake London absolutely goes off last week, even against Christian Gonzalez. I mean, just looking incredible. Darnell Mooney, you can't use him. I mean, I'm dropping him now. I've been like holding him. I mean, I think you can still kind of hold him, but it's just like it's the Bijan, London, even Pitts. I don't know what Mooney's really going to do in this offense. He may have a couple of good games on the stretch, but there's some other guys that you can move on to. I don't mind it at this point. So, yeah, Drake London. We heard the reports that Penix was just nonstop targeting him, in the preseason and in training camp, and it's coming to fruition. So a little bit of a slow start for him, but now it's flying on the radar, and you expect him to have another good game here. Obviously, they acquire Sauce, but I'm not worried about it. We just saw what he did to Christian Gonzalez, one of the better corners in the league. So, Sauce has still got to get acclimated. Kyle Pitts, not a bad option here in this game. Colts actually aren't the best against tight ends. They're third worst, allowing 5 for 66 against Chig, 8 for 72 against Trey McBride, 7 for 164 to Aronde Gadsden. Then last week, even Darnell Washington going 4 for 43. So you expect Pitts maybe a 4 for 50, 5 for 60, something like that. Again, like I mentioned, Colts have been pretty good against fantasy running backs, 8th overall. But no DeForest Buckner is a big loss. Could be a little bit of a nice bounce back. We did see Tajay Spears go for almost 7 yards a carry and a touchdown against them 2 weeks ago in week 8. They slowed down Jaylen Warren last week, just 31 yards on 16 carries, but got into the end zone twice. So, you don't get too worried about Bijan. Obviously you're using him everywhere. Everybody and their mother is using Bijan. And you just, maybe the fantasy cap is limited a little bit, but you feel good about maybe Kyle Pitts in this game. Penix is not a terrible option. He could give you, again, one good game, one bad game, one good game, one bad. Maybe this is the bad game. It's kind of what he does, but I don't mind using him. Colts aren't the best against fantasy quarterbacks. Jacoby Brissett threw for 320, 2 touchdowns against them. Even Cam Ward threw for 259 and a touchdown. Rodgers didn't have the best game last week, just a touchdown on 200 yards, but I could see 200, 225, 250 yards, 2 touchdowns. So not a bad option to use. I'm going to be using him, I think, in one league. On the other side, Alec Pierce is starting to go off for the Colts. He's looking really good. Pittman's having an amazing year. Josh Downs has gotten it going the past couple weeks. Tyler Warren's slowing down a little bit, and the Falcons are number 1 against fantasy tight ends. So what are we expecting from Tyler Warren this week? Maybe not a whole lot. Maybe this is a little bit of another down week for Ty Warren. Shout out to the Fantasy Rabbit Dad saying Tyler Warren is benchable this week. That's interesting. I don't know about benchable, but hey, if you have other options, maybe. You want to be bold, you could do it. Still throw them out there. But maybe we're not expecting too much. I'm not really expecting a whole lot from the Colts in this game. But Alec Pierce, Pittman, obviously I like using those guys. Downs is decent. Warren, like I said, not the best matchup. And then Jonathan Taylor, first bad game of the year. This should be a nice bounce back spot for him. Falcons allowing 4.2 yards per carry. And they haven't been terrible. McCaffrey, similar, 24 carries for $129, 2 touchdowns, week 7. So Taylor could get going. I could see maybe Daniel Jones possibly struggling a little bit again in this game. Falcons could bring pressure. We'll see what Raheem Morris, maybe he picks some things up off what the Steelers did last week. But I do have some picks in this game. And so far, so we started making picks in week 7. We started absolutely late this year. I actually didn't start doing shows until week 7, where normally I'm doing shows on this channel early in the year. Well, Face Off Sports Network, I've been usually doing my NFL pick shows, but things changed this year. So we get back to the NFL picks here late in week 7. Last couple of years, I've been about 52, 53% overall. So far, year to date on the picks, we're 14-12, and on props, we're 17-20. But I think on the plus side, we had a lot of plus props like a couple weeks ago when Puka was out. We had the Devontae Adams plus 550, 2 touchdowns prop. So units were probably up there. I haven't calculated it all, but the record-wise, 17-20 and 14-12 on the sides and totals. But in this game, I like the Falcons getting 6.5. I think it's a lot of points. I think the Falcons are going to come to play here. The Falcons have lost 3 in a row. So this is a big, big game for them here. Just sitting at 3-5. Colts are 7-2, and maybe Pittsburgh figures something a little bit out. Maybe the Colts go on a little bit of a struggle here. But even if they win this game, I still think the Falcons can cover. So I'm going to go with the Falcons in Germany plus the 6.5. And I'm also going to take a Daniel Jones interception in this game to keep that going. Actually, a turnover would be good because he could definitely fumble. So if you get the turnover or the interception, maybe you could take both or just take the turnover because, he definitely could fumble in this game as well. All right, back to the chat. We got the Kleeman. What's up, man? Another guy on Twitch. Appreciate you. If you guys are on YouTube, though, head over to my YouTube channel, at Fantasy Savvy. Just put that YouTube at Fantasy Savvy or put in the search Fantasy Savvy and follow me over there too. I appreciate it. Who should I trade Amon-Ra for? My wide receiver position is somewhat strong. Do I buy Brees or Judkins? No, you keep Amon-Ra. I don't know. Why do you want to trade Amon-Ra? He's been, he's incredible in fantasy. He's just a rock solid player. So Brees, I like Brees, but no. And Judkins, no. Judkins is going to give you those games where he's going to get games scripted out because they can't move the ball. We've seen that a few times this year. And the same thing with Brees. We've seen it a few times where the Jets just can't get anything going on offense. Now, it might get a little bit better for the Jets on the stretch, but you cannot trade Amon-Ra for Brees or Judkins. You got to aim higher than that. If you're trading Amon-Ra, to answer your questions, you're looking for a running back like, Jonathan Taylor or, Bijan, something that high. I mean, Amon-Ra was a first-round pick, early second-round pick. Taylor was a, second-round pick. He's performing like a, number 1 overall pick right now. But that's the type of player you need to. So you need to probably find somebody that's stacked at running back and needs a receiver. If you want to trade Amon-Ra. So if you're trading Amon-Ra, you must be really stacked at the receiver position. But unless you get an incredible deal, you just want to hold Amon-Ra there. All right. Next game. Baltimore, Minnesota. And Minnesota coming off a very, very impressive performance last week. Brian Flores dialing it up, creating a ton of pressure on the Lions, shutting down Jahmyr Gibbs. I mean, that was a shocker to me. Jahmyr Gibbs, I took his props last week, and they were just blitzing him so much. He was like forced to pass block, and they were taking away his passing. He couldn't go out to, run his routes because they were just bringing guys with the middle. He was forced to pass while they were pushing him back. They were getting a Goff, and Minnesota really just had a great plan after the Lions kind of had their number the past few years and had Flores' number. So Flores was like, screw this. I got to change things up. And he got it done, winning 27-24. So big win for the Vikings there, big divisional win. They moved to 4-4 now. Now they get the Ravens. Ravens, get that win against Chicago with Snoop Huntley, Tyler Huntley, and then they get Lamar back last week, 28-6. Steelers dropped a couple, but the Steelers get a big win last week. Big game for the Steelers this week. We'll get to later, playing Sunday night against the Chargers. But 28-6 last week for Baltimore, and now they play each other. This is an interesting game. The spread is kind of tight. I'm going to take Vikings +4. I think J.J. McCarthy is back and ready to, continue to get better and better. We saw some very nice throws last week against the Lions. Had some, still not all the way there, but a lot of people gave up on him after 2 weeks. And I actually think he could be one of a pretty strong fantasy quarterback down the stretch here. And he does have that rushing upside. So I also like JJ in this game over 210 passing yards with the Vikings +4. Now, maybe the Ravens win this game, but I do like JJ passing yards over the total 210 and the Vikings +4. Zay Flowers, it's kind of frustrating with him. He's just, they like to run the football. It's kind of tough because you got Henry, you got Lamar, you got the tight ends, and then Rashad Bateman stealing touchdowns from him. So it is frustrating with Zay Flowers, but you throw him out there, he could have a big game at any moment. You just don't know really when it's going to come. Vikings have been 8th best against fantasy receivers, allowed 126 to DK Metcalf, 121 and 183 to Brown and Devonta Smith, 97 to St. Brown and 66 to JMO last week. So you could see Zay Flowers 5-6 catches maybe for 60 or 70 yards and a touchdown. But I tell you, Rashad Bateman keeps stealing his touchdowns. 9 touchdowns last week. We saw last year. Bateman had another touchdown. Bateman's a guy that you could grab and use in this game. It's not a terrible option. He could get into the end zone again. And then the tight ends, we're seeing Andrews, 2 catches for 22 yards, but 2 touchdowns last week. And the Vikings 21st against tight ends. And then we saw Likely 3 catches for 60 yards last week. So he's on your radar. I don't think you use Likely quite yet, unless you're in a deep league or a tight end premium league. But he could have a decent game here too. And Lamar, you just keep him in your lineup every week. I don't care what other quarterbacks you have. Obviously, you took him that high. You're starting him every single week, and he's going to give you the production you need. One of the best fantasy quarterbacks. So, yeah, it should be a decent game here. Pretty good total on this game. Where is the total? Total is 49. Let's take a look at the weather this week real quick. Obviously, no weather in this game. Being in the dome. But I always like to just see if there's any weather we got to worry about. Looks like some rain in New York. Nothing concerning. Chicago's the one concerning factor here. It looks like we're going to get some wind, 15 to 20 miles per hour, gusts to 30 miles per hour. It's going to be cold. Maybe some sleet. Maybe some snowflakes during the game. That should be interesting to watch. Washington, chance for some showers, and Green Bay, Monday Night Football. Freezing temperatures, possible snow showers or snow flurries. It doesn't look like anything too crazy. I guess the one concerning game could be the Chicago game with some sleet and some winds. That could be like a wet, sloppy game, a lot of running the football, low scoring. Quarterback's not really doing much through the air. But besides that, not too bad. Anyway, Ravens, Minnesota. Zay Flowers, the tight ends, you feel pretty good about. Derrick Henry, it's slowly, you kind of slowly seeing the decline. He's still productive. We just haven't really seen a bunch of those big runs that we're used to from him. Vikings 12th best against running backs, allowing 4 yards per carry, just 5 touchdowns on the ground. Bijan went for $143 against them. Gainwell actually had a nice game for them against them, 99 yards and 2 touchdowns. Kamani Vidal, 117. So, yeah, this could be a really good spot for Derrick Henry, actually. This could be a game where he kind of excels. And that's certainly a way. I mean, we just saw Gibbs get erased last week. They did a hell of a job on him. But, just 9 carries. So we'll see. I'm not going to take the Henry prop, the rushing prop, but he definitely could have a good game, could fall into the end zone as well. But again, Vikings just 5 touchdowns allowed on the year. On the other side of the football, we do like J.J. Jefferson. Jordan Addison's been solid all year. T.J. Hawkinson. He did score last week. But you should have some better options. Ravens about middle of the pack. The running back situation, Aaron Jones looks like he's going to get back with the shoulder injury. Jordan Mason's looking like he's slowing down, and then now he's got Jones in the way. So it's actually not a bad matchup on paper. 5th worst against running backs for the Ravens. But they haven't allowed a 100-yard rusher all year. I'm surprised they're 5th worst. 4.6 yards per carry, 8 touchdowns, allowing a decent amount through the air, too, 306 yards. So if Jones gets out there, I kind of like him. Mason could fall into the end zone, but just the problem with both these guys, well, more so Mason, he just has no upside. So, I have to use him in some spots. I may just chase some other guys for some upside. I don't know, maybe Amari DiMercato or something. I don't know. I can't see Mason scoring more than freaking 10 points. And sometimes you need that upside. If you guys are listening to the show, head into the chat and ask anything you want. And if you could tell me where this line is from and what movie, I'll send you $5. All right? PayPal, Venmo. If you could tell me what movie this line is from. All right. I think that wraps that baby up. And again, we like the Vikings +4 and J.J. McCarthy over 210. I really like that prop. I think J.J. McCarthy is going to have a pretty good passing game here. Ravens secondary is getting healthier, but there's too many good receivers. I feel like J.J. could. He's had a lot of low totals. I'm just seeing a nice game from him here. In a high scoring game. I just think that total is too low, and he's got value on the market right now. So you want to take advantage of that value while it's still there before that number starts moving up. All right, next game, New England versus Tampa Bay. It looks like Bucky Irving is going to be out once again. It's just a hot mess. It's a disaster for fantasy football. 2nd round pick. So productive when he was in there earlier in the year. And Rachaad White is just slowing down to a halt. They need Bucky Irving back, and he hasn't practiced all freaking week. Doesn't sound like he's coming back. Looks like he's out another week. I don't even know when. He might be out another 2 weeks. Could maybe 3 weeks. They didn't put him on the IR. So maybe next week is the week where he starts practicing. Hopefully this is the last week. It's been absolutely brutal. Because I need him in so much. I drafted a good amount of Bucky Irving. It's killing me. You expect him to maybe be out a week, 2 weeks. What is this, 5-6 weeks now? It's disastrous. So Rachaad White again, you don't get excited about Rachaad White because the Patriots' run defense is very stout, just 3.1 yards per carry, just 2 rushing touchdowns on the year. And Rashad White has never been the best runner. He usually does most of his work in the receiving game. So I'm going Rashad White under 43.5 rushing yards is my only play in this game. Tez Johnson, I don't mind using here. Obviously, Ibuka. I'm tempering my expectations, though, overall. But the total is kind of high here at 48. So, and this game could kind of go back and forth. So, Tez Johnson's not a bad play. Ibuka could have a nice game. He's kind of due for a better game. Cade Otton actually has a good matchup here on paper. If you want to utilize him, I'm not crazy about it. I feel like Cade Otton's like a low upside guy. I mean, a low ceiling guy, like 4 for 40, 4 for 50. But we've seen Cade Otton have some big games. Patriots seem like they're getting worse and worse against the tight ends every single year. Shout out Joe Carlton. Been talking about that, being a Patriots fan. So, not a bad move there. That's it. And Chris Godwin, again, it sounds like the report is he might not be coming back till end of November, maybe early December. And we don't know about Bucky Irving. Sean Tucker could get some work in this game as well. That's more of a desperate option. Is there a chance he, outshines Rashad White on the ground? Possibly. You expect Rashad White to catch most of the passes. So you still use Rashad White. You're just not thrilled with it. The Patriots, again, have been very, very stout against fantasy running backs. Have allowed a decent amount of catches, though. Actually, the most. So that's interesting. They allowed the most catches to running backs, 55. Just one touchdown allowed, 367 yards. But yeah, most catches to running backs, so they're not allowing anything on the ground. But still, just top defense against fantasy running backs. So not the best matchup. I'm going to take that under rushing total for Rashad White. Drake May, again, high total. Yeah, he's giving you great production every single week, fantasy-wise. You're keeping him in there. Kayshon Boutte, we don't know if he's going to come back yet. Diggs, I'm not really thrilled about. Is it Matt Collins or Hunter Henry? I don't know. I don't really feel comfortable using. It's tough to trust these Patriot receivers. It's hard to predict who's going to do what. But, Diggs is not a bad matchup in a 50 total. Bucks about middle of the pack against fantasy receivers. 132 to JSN, 142 to Kendrick Bourne. Rashid Shaheed, 9 for 75, and Chris Olave, 8 for 63 before their bye week. Demario Douglas, I mean, he could produce. Hunter Henry's been middle of the pack. I mean, Bucks have been middle of the pack against tight ends, so Hunter Henry is not terrible. I just don't know who's going to get it done. And then Ramondre is going to be out, it looks like, again. So it's going to be Travion Henderson. And then, you have Terrell Jennings, who scored a touchdown last week, but how much is he really going to do? Trevion's not a bad one. Actually, I could see Trevion being pretty decent here in the pass game. And maybe he breaks some big runs. Bucks middle of the pack against fantasy running backs. Yeah, don't mind the Trevion receiving totals here. Bijan had 100 yards. Christian McCaffrey had 57. Gibbs had 82. I mean, these are the best fantasy receiving backs in the league. But even Nick Chubb had 29. Woody Marks had 37 yards. Saquon had 31 yards. Kamara had 24. So, yeah, I mean, Trevion, you're not expecting a lot. Maybe 10 points. Is this the Trevion breakout game? I don't know. I just don't think Trevion is that great. I mean, I think he's a little overhyped, personally. He's certainly, you give him a hole and he could break a big run. But Yeah, he's not the most shifty guy. Like, he just needs the hole. I mean, you give him the hole, he could break through for sure. But he's not gonna like make a cut that's gonna, or it's just, I don't know. I think he's a little overrated. Goes down kind of easy. Kind of reminds me of DeAndre Swift a little bit. Seems like when Trevion does get into the open, though, he kind of runs with more force than Swift. Um, but they're similar. I think they just got to get him more involved in the passing game a little bit more. So we'll see if they do that this week. Again, Ramondre looks like he's going to be out. All right, next game is going to be, let's talk about the Browns at the Jets. Jets coming off their bye. Before the bye, they get that big win in Cincinnati, 39-38. Justin Fields, a little bit of a redemption game after the owner calls him out. Cleveland has been shitty. Dylan Gabriel is not playing good football. They did get the win against Miami in that terrible weather game, which definitely, anytime you have a weather game against Miami, it's always good for the team playing Miami, because Miami just can't play in good and shitty weather games. But it's possible we could see Shador Sanders here. It looks like Harold Fannin, who missed practice with a hamstring injury, might be out this game. So it could be the David Njoku game. This is on paper. This is a really good matchup for Quinshon Judkins. Jets have been getting sort of obliterated on the ground, 4.41 yards per carry. We saw before the bye, P. Ryan had 9 for 94 and a touchdown. Chase Brown had 12 for 73 and a touchdown. Rico Dowdle went for 17 for 79. But they've had some good rushing game, rushing defense performances too. J.K. Dobbins, they slowed down. Bucky Irving, they slowed down 25 for 66. Javante tore him up. So they kind of been hit or miss for the most part. Been getting torched, though. And no Quinnen Williams now. He's just shipped off to Dallas. But Jets defense is going to have a chip on their shoulder. But obviously, I think everybody's expecting Quinshon to come out here and have a big game. So I don't know. He could. He certainly could. Could he have a 100-yard game and a touchdown or two? For sure. Could he have a 60, 70-yard game or, and be held out of the end zone? That could happen as well. Because Dylan Gabriel, again, no Fannin now. Judy hasn't been doing much. They're going to get Cedric Tillman back, which obviously helps the offense. But it just seems like Gabriel can't really throw it downfield too much. He just dinks and dunks. That's why Fannin was so productive. So, again, we could see Sanders in this game, maybe at halftime. Somehow the Jets are, shutting down this offense. So you don't get excited for much, but you're going to use Judkins. If Fannin's out, you feel pretty good about Njoku. Actually, Njoku becomes one of the better starts of the week. Judy and Tillman, forget about it. Gabriel and Superflex only. On the other side, Justin Fields. This is not a great matchup for him. Fields has given us some really good games in fantasy and some really bad games. Like, the ceiling is enormous, but the floor can be disastrous. I tend to think that he's kind of moved past the disaster zone. Like, I don't think he's going to be as bad as we saw in a couple of those games. Now, that all wasn't on him. The receivers are throwing out there. Josh Reynolds, Arian Smith, Tyler Johnson, terrible protection, terrible play calling, run, pass, screens, just hideous, but good bounce back game against Cincinnati. Now, we expect him to start too. Aaron Glenn is being reserved about naming the starter. Is it because he's trying to motivate Fields a little bit more, or is it that, and he's trying to make teams have to prepare for Fields regardless, even if they're not going to use him, but they are going to use him. I think, I'd be shocked if they don't use Justin Fields. So maybe it gives them a slight advantage. Obviously, preparing for Fields is much different than preparing for Tyrod Taylor. You got to look for all those read options and running plays, and you got to maybe put spies in there. So it does create a little bit of a difference in your game plan. So I don't mind Aaron Glenn holding back on that, even though Fields' play hasn't been great, but still, you got to account for his rushing. So it makes you think a little bit more, maybe change some things. But anyway, Fields, if you wanted to use him, I don't see a high ceiling here. Maybe 20 points, but he could give you a 10-point, 15-point game. But I just feel like he could have a decent rushing game here. He could throw for 150, maybe a touchdown or two as well. Garrett Wilson's going to return. I feel very good about using Garrett Wilson. I have no qualms about that. The Browns haven't been exactly great against fantasy receivers. Mac Hollins had 7 for 89 in week 8. Booty had 3 for 75 and a touchdown. Justin Jefferson, 7 for 123. Addison, 5 for 41 and a touchdown. Matthew Golden, 4 for 52. Zay Flowers, 7 for 75. So Wilson comes back. They pick up Adonai Mitchell, obviously. They pick up John Mechie. These guys may get a little burned this week, but Wilson's still going to be the main guy. And if anything, if these guys get a little burned, they'll probably help Wilson a little bit, take a little more attention away from him. So Jets made some good moves. I'm really happy with the moves the Jets made. I love Sauce Gardner. It's tough to see him go, but they get 2 firsts and Adonai Mitchell. I can't complain about that. They just got to hit on the picks. And Quinton Williams wanted to leave anyway. So, if he doesn't want to be here, you pick up a first and a second round, I'll take it all day. So Fields, if you have to use him, I may use him. I'm going to use him in a couple spots. I don't feel terrible about it. I don't feel great about it. I don't feel terrible about it. And Garrett Wilson, I have confidence in. Mason Taylor's not a bad one either. Probably still the second option. He may be hurt by the Mechie and Adonai Mitchell pickups as we keep going along here. Browns, again, about middle of the pack against fantasy tight ends. So Taylor, not the best start. Brees, not a good start on paper. Browns, number 2 against fantasy running backs, just 3.68 yards per carry. But you're using Brees. He's going to get a lot of volume. They kept him around. We saw Isaiah Davis getting mixed in. He looked good as well. Actually, if you need to use him in your flex spot in this bye week, he's not a terrible option. So that's pretty much it. I just got a couple picks in this game. Going to take the Jets +2. Going to take Garrett Wilson over 55.5 receiving yards. Going to take Brees Hall over 68.5 rushing yards. And Fields over 35.5 rushing yards. The Browns, well, 2 reasons I'm going to take the Fields prop. Drake May just ran for 50 yards against them. That was the most all year. But they faced Lamar in week 2. Only 2 carries for 13 yards, but didn't really face any other scramblers besides that. And I just feel like Fields had that contusion injury early on the year. Now off the bye, I think he's going to rely on his legs. I think he's fully healthy. I think they're going to have more designed runs this week for him. So I actually like that one probably more than the Brees over. I do like the Wilson, though, over 55.5. I feel like there's value in all these. The Brees one might be a little elevated. So that's probably my least favorite, but I do like the Fields. I like the Wilson, and I'm going to take the Jets at home +2. I think the Jets are actually going to win this game. All right. Next game. New Orleans at Carolina. Carolina favored by 5.5 at home. 39.5 total. Ugly, ugly, ugly. Tyler Shuck now manning the quarterback position, taking over Spencer Rattler. Saints are 1-8 on the season. Alvin Kamara's season has been a disaster. They ship off Rashid Shaheed to Seattle. So it's the Chris Olave show. Better for Juwan Johnson. Devon Vele, who they picked up a fourth rounder from Denver before the season started, is supposedly going to get a lot more work. And I actually don't think he he might not be a bad play this week. Now they have Tipton and Brandon Cooks as well, but it sounds like Vele is the guy that um, is going to get the most usage in the absence of Shaheed. Now Cooks kind of fits that Shaheed role more, but Cooks is, he's older now. What is he? 30, 32, 33. So Vele is kind of interesting. I think he's a good player. He's underrated. He's a big receiver. You know, I don't know that. So I would only use him in DFS though. He's got to be dirt cheap in DFS, probably like 3,000 something. I just don't mind it. I think Chuck is going to chuck. I think he's a little underrated. I could see them possibly covering this game, but no play here for me at all. I have nothing here. Bryce Young has been underwhelming. Ted McMillan, I can't get too excited about. Rico Dowdle has looked amazing. I mean, I got to say, I did not see this coming at all. I watched him last year at Dallas. Thought he was good initially, and then I kept watching like, he's not that good. And I thought Chuba Hubbard was better than him. I was never a big Chuba guy. Took him at a couple spots this year. One of my bigger teams too, which I got to stop doing. I kind of diversify in the wrong spots sometimes. Pissed about that. But, Chuba was good last year, and I thought it was going to be the same. And every time Canales has a running back, he's very, very productive. Chuba got hurt, and Dowdle, man, he looks like one of the best running backs in the league right now. I mean, he's running with absolute force. Now, he's got a little bit of a thigh injury. He's going to play in this game. His rushing prop is kind of high, 86.5. I didn't want to take it because it was kind of high. But certainly, he could have another monster game here. The game script is excellent. So, Rico Dowdle, this could be like a 2-touchdown type game, 150 yards. I mean, it could be a monstrous game for him. Even Chuba could have a decent game. And if, maybe they give Chuba a little bit more here with the Dowdle injury. Tet, you're going to use, but he's just a little underwhelming. Again, I think he's a little overrated personally, but he's definitely hurt. Similar to Harrison was hurt with Murray, with Bryce Young. I think that's holding him back a little bit, but I do think he's a little overrated. And I think he was just being drafted too high. Coker, Leggett, forget about it. You're not trusting any of these guys. Carolina D, that's a popular pick. I'm going to be using him in a couple spots. And then Olave, you expect a lot. Kamara, I mean, you're looking for other guys. I mean, it's just been brutal with Alvin Kamara this year. Gone are the days of the Sean Payton regime and all those remnants that were there. Dennis Allen the last couple of years, Pete Carmichael, the offensive coordinator, just fired until recently. The Kamara 97 dump-off show is over. It always kind of felt kind of cheap because Kamara was never a big rushing guy. Always just caught 97 balls. I mean, Kamara would have those type of games. He catch like 11 passes for 34 yards. But in PPR, which is a shame because the guy could run for 100 yards, and Kamara is outperforming because he caught 11 passes and went nowhere. But to Kamara's credit, he is a very good receiving back. He makes a lot of plays, breaks a lot of tackles. But there's a lot of cheapy points there. Those days seem like they're finally over. They're throwing downfield more in this Kellen Moore offense. So I kind of like Vele again for DFS purposes. If you need to use as a desperate pick, I don't mind it. But Olave should see a ton of targets now. So obviously you're using him. He may not have a ton of yards. He may not get in the end zone, but he should finish with 60, 70 yards and at least 5, 6, 7 catches. Okay, enough of that game. A lot of underwhelming games. Baltimore, Minnesota is good. Atlanta, Indy, and Germany's not bad. New England, Tampa, stuff. Jacksonville, Houston, which we're going to talk about now. Cleveland Jets, New Orleans, Carolina. Jacksonville, Houston, we're getting Davis Mills. CJ Stroud out with the concussion. Looks like Brian Thomas is not going to play. They pick up Jacoby Myers from the Raiders. Parker Washington. Whenever he's been out in the field and getting the ball thrown his way, he always looks good. He's just been kind of buried there. But you expect him to kind of be the number one guy. People are waiting for Brenton Strange to come back. They're stashing Brenton Strange, which I don't mind. We still don't know when he's coming back. But not a great matchup for Parker Washington, even though he's the number one guy right now. You know, again, Jacoby Myers is there. It's going to take him a while to get acclimated here. So you don't expect him to come off right at the bat. Now, Diami Brown looks like he's going to work his way back too. But I still want Parker Washington. You know, how do I feel about using him in this matchup? I just don't see a lot of upside, but could he give you double-digit fantasy points? Yeah, 5 for 50. Just banged my knee on my desk. 5 for 60, you know, 6 for 60 maybe. I don't see a lot of upside, but maybe he surprises. He's a pretty good player. Made some tough catches last week. Texans just got really good corners. Their secondary's tough. They're going to give Lawrence a lot of issues this week. The only 100-yard receiver they let up was Puka Nacua of all guys. They held Adams to 50, Mike Evans to 50, Brian Thomas to 50. Actually, the week 3 matchup, Parker Washington had 4 catches for 34 yards. Zay Flowers, 5 for 72. Jawan Jennings, 4 for 45. So you're not expecting a lot here from Parker Washington. You're not really expecting a whole lot from this Jaguars offense in general. This is going to be an ugly game. And then you get Davis Mills on the other side, so you don't even feel great about Nico. Nick Chubb, Woody Marks. I don't really want to use anybody except for Kyra Fairbairn, the kicker, but he's questionable. So it's kind of a disaster of a game. The total is 37.5. I'm taking the under. That's it for that game. Let's keep it moving. New York Giants at the Chicago Bears. This was the game I talked about earlier with the weather, possible sleet, snowflakes, not a ton, some winds. It's going to be ugly. Giants getting 3.5 total, 46.5. We'll see how dirty this weather gets. Could be nothing, though. Could be low winds, a couple flurries here and there. Could be absolutely nothing. Like playing in your backyard on a November night, a November day. But Jackson Dart, you continue to utilize him. Even if his passing upside is limited, he could run a ton in this game. I'm going to take his over rushing prop in this game. Over 40.5 rushing yards. And I'm also going to take the Caleb Williams over rushing prop, which is just 16.5. Looking at it earlier, the Giants have been allowing some rushing to the quarterbacks. And Jaden Daniels ran for 68. Herbert ran for 24. Rattler ran for 21. Bo Nix ran for 48, his most of the year, and 2 touchdowns. Jalen Hurts ran for 22. So now you get Caleb, who hasn't been running a ton, but certainly is capable. And it's just 16.5. I feel like that's a solid one. So let's clip that baby, put it out there. Caleb and Dart with the Giants plus 4.5, same game parlay. I think the Giants are going to cover this game. The Giants are kind of a shit show. They've lost 4 of the last 5. The Bears, they've been winning a lot of close games against Vegas, 25-24, against the Commanders, 25-24, and the Commanders turned it over 3 times. Against the Bengals, 47-42, because the Bengals defense couldn't stop shit. Giants defense isn't the best. They do have a good pass rush. Could get to Caleb, could cause some problems. Can they slow down the Bears' run game, which Ben Johnson certainly has gotten going? He's got this line run blocking very well, more so than pass blocking. And that's certainly what they're going to try to do, especially given the conditions in this game. So the Giants, where are they? Second worst against fantasy running backs, allowing 5.89 yards per carry to fantasy running backs. And we just picked up a new subscriber. Appreciate you, Be Growing Stuff. Thank you, my man. Really, really appreciate that. So yeah, this is how the Bears are going to try to attack them this week for sure, especially with the weather concerns. You know, Caleb's been missing a ton of throws. I don't know how the hell Rome Odunze didn't have a freaking catch last week. You know, I'm not the biggest Rome Odunze guy, but still shocking to me. But yeah, Krosky, Merritt, 82 yards and a touchdown. Javonte, 97 yards and a touchdown. Hampton, 128 yards and a touchdown. Dobbins, 81 yards. Saquon, $150. Tank Bigsby, 104. Christian McCaffrey, 106. So good spot for the running backs for the Bears with DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai. Now, Kyle Monangai had a monster game. Shout out to Kyle Monangai. I got to admit, not a Monangai guy. I don't think he's that talented, but he is a grinder for sure. He's similar to Isaiah Pacheco. They're similar. They're like tough runners that aren't the most talented guys, but they could kind of move the pile a little bit. And although I think he goes down kind of easy, but he's a Jersey guy, just like Pacheco, both 7-round picks, both Rutgers guys. And Monangai played at Don Bosco, one of the big programs in New Jersey, northern New Jersey. And, both these guys could be relevant. Did Monangai kind of earn a little bit more of a role over Swift? Yeah, I think he has. Now, that guy, Britton Brooks, came in for like a carry and had like the longest run over Monangai. So these guys are all kind of outperforming each other. And Roschon Johnson, like arguably, he could be the best running back on the team. He just hasn't gotten a chance. He's always freaking hurt. But yeah, you're using Monangai and Swift in this matchup, considering the weather, considering the way the Bears are blocking up their run game and how bad the Giants have been against running backs. Caleb, you don't feel great about with the weather, especially, even though it's not a terrible matchup on paper. I still don't feel great about it. Rome, you're probably using, but again, they could be running a lot, but still, you could probably expect a bounce back, maybe another a 5 or 50, maybe gets in the end zone. DJ Moore's tough. Caleb can only make so many guys relevant. It's usually like one guy, really. Colson Loveland's going to be a big play for a lot of people this week with the Cole Kmet being out with the injury. Giants are 13th against fantasy tight ends. 9 for 78 to Ferguson. 3 for 26 and a touchdown against Ertz. 4 for 26 against Kelsey. 9 for 110 against Goddard. 5 for 42 against Ingram. 3 for 28. 2 touchdowns against Goddard. 4 for 32. Good job on Kittle last week. So we'll see about Colson Loveland. People are more high on him than I am. Still feel like Warren should have been the number 1 tight end, but Johnson obviously took him for a reason. He's showing out a little bit with the injuries to Cole Kmet, especially last week, although the Bengals defense is absolutely hideous. So I don't know how much you take away from that, and Monangai. But if you want to use Colston on a bye week like this, I don't hate it. Especially when Harold Fannon's going to probably miss too. He's a guy that it really sucks. I own so much Kraft and I own so much Fannin, and they're both out this week. So I'm probably going to have to resort to I don't even know. I mean, I'm pretty stacked at tight end a lot of these teams, but Fan would have been a nice option to put in there. Goddard. I have Kincaid. I have little Pitts. I have some Gatson, some Mark Andrews, Laporta, a little bit into Joku. So we'll see what I come up with. I got a decent amount of Kittle too. Bowers obviously again was a disaster tonight. But yeah, the Bears are just tough to predict. So they're going to run the football. The Giants side dart. Singletary was getting more usage than Tracy. We'll see if that switches back to more Tracy this week. Tracy is just, again, he's a little overrated too. People thought he was going to hold off Cam Scatterbo. That was a big mistake. He's lucky that, fantasy owners are lucky that Cam is out for the year. Another devastating fantasy injury. Had a lot of Cam. Bucky, I've been feeling the injury bug pretty good at fantasy this year. I'm going to be honest. Between Kraft, Bucky Irving, and Cam Scatterbo, it's been kind of rough. Losing Lamar for a while, Brock Bowers. But it happens to us all, especially when you play as many leagues as I am. But so Singletary and Tracy, both decent flex options, I guess. Do I feel about better than one other guy than the other? I don't know. I feel like Tracy could be better than Singletary. Singletary could be better than Tracy. Darius Slayton keeps dropping all these balls right in his hands every single week, but he's not a terrible option. Dark keeps putting right on the money. Wandale, you probably feel better about in this type of weather game than Slayton. The Bears are fifth worst against fantasy receivers. So Slayton's not bad. And then Theo Johnson. Bears aren't the best against fantasy tight ends. Allowed 4 touchdowns receiving, 463 yards. Ferguson had a big game, 82 yards. Bowers 5 for 46. Zach Ertz 6 for 43 and a touchdown. Juwan Johnson 5 for 79. So Theo could do something here. But I think Dart finishes with 20 fantasy points at least. And again, I like the over rushing prop here. I like the Giants plus the 4.5. I think it's a little too many points. And we're going to go with Caleb over 16.5 rushing yards as well. Okay, next game. Voice is getting a little scratchy here. Did we skip any of these games? I'll get Atlanta down. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th game. Still in the 1 o'clocks. So we got 7 1 o'clocks. And we're going to have 3 4 o'clocks. And then we got the 1 London game. Sunday night and the Monday night. So last 1 o'clock, then we'll get into 3 4 o'clocks. Actually, there's only 2 4 o'clocks. Oh, no, 3 4 o'clocks. My bad. Yep. Sunday and Monday. Buffalo, Miami. Buffalo's defense looked absolutely incredible last week against the Chiefs. Cole Bishop looked like, Cooper DeJean 2.0, breaking up pass after pass. He's getting better as a player for sure. And then Hairston, the rookie from Kentucky, looked freaking awesome. Running stride for stride with Worthy. He looks good. Second game back now. Their secondary looked great. McDermott had a great plan. Bosa looked amped up. Now, could this be a little bit of a letdown game? I don't think so. This is still a divisional game. Buffalo has been playing some closer games with Miami since that 31-10 blowout back in 2024. September 12th. I actually went to that game last year. That game was over. Even before Tua got hurt in that game was over. They were just, Miami couldn't do anything. But then they played again 30-27 in Buffalo and then 31-21 in Buffalo as well. Buffalo is playing for the division with the Patriots. So this is a huge game for them. They got to keep pace with the Patriots. So they cannot, let their guard down. They also want to try to get that number 1 seed. But first, they got to win the division, but they'll be striving to get that number 1 seed in the last year in their stadium. But they look, defense looked absolutely incredible. Josh Allen was efficient. He was throwing darts left and right. He was locked in. James Cook had a great game. Now, James Cook, everybody was panicking because James Cook got his leg rolled up on and it was questionable, but he says he's going to be out there this week. Talking to Kay Adams today. So it sounds like he'll be fine. I guess if you're a James Cook owner, you could have Ray Davis or Ty Johnson ready to go just in case. But if Cook was somehow out, I don't really, who the hell knows? It'll probably be a mix. I think Davis would probably get a little more carries, but they really could split it 50-50. Shakir, you throw him out there. He's just he's tough to predict. He's never going to give you he'll give you a huge game once in a while. Most of the time it's like a 5 for 50. Josh Palmer may come back. Forget about him. Keon Coleman, you can't use. Dalton Kincaid, like the matchup for him here. He's been Josh Allen's best fantasy asset, best teammate to target this year. Dolphins 5th worst against fantasy tight ends. 7 for 76 against Tyler Warren, 66 in the last matchup, and a touchdown against Kincaid. 65 yards to Mason Taylor, 68 to Gadsden, 59 to Pitts. Likely went for 60 on 3 catches, and Andrews went for 222 and 2, and even Charlie Kohler caught a touchdown last week as well. So Dalton Kincaid, I like the over receiving prop here. 41.5. You could even take the touchdown prop as well. Bills are favored by 10.5. It's actually a big number. I think the Dolphins, when I think I had the Dolphins, the Bills winning by like 8 or 9. So technically, I should take the Dolphins, but there's no chance. The Bills could easily blow them out. So I'm just going to stay away from that. Nothing on the total. That is pretty high, 50. Just going to go with that Kincaid prop. And then, Josh Allen, Cook. If Cook's out, yeah, you could use Ray Davis or Ty Johnson, Kincaid, and Shakir, and that's it. And then Jalen Waddle, 100% A-Chan. No Tua. Greg Dulcich had a decent game last week. If you're desperate, tight end premium maybe. Malik Washington on mine, over 27.5 receiving yards. They're going to have to throw a lot. I actually like that prop. I could definitely see him with 30, 40 yards. I think that's kind of low, actually. But Bills should get the win here. Did they cover? Who knows? But I don't think there's any chance of losing. So Survivor this week, if you're taking, you still have the Bills. I think it's a good pick. Obviously one of the bigger spreads of the week, or maybe the biggest spread of the week. It is the biggest spread of the week. So yeah, probably the best Survivor pick. Or one of the best. All right. 4:00 session now. Arizona versus Seattle. Seattle playing great football. Pick up Rashid Shaheed, winning 6 of their last 7 games. Their last loss was the Tampa, 38-35. But one of 6 of 7. They're 6-2. They pick up Rashid Shaheed now. Shaheed seems happy. He says he wants to stay in Seattle. Cooper Kupp may not practice this week. May not be back this week. He's limited in practice. Torrey Horton is also a little bit limited as well. So, Shaheed may have a pretty decent role right off the bat. And again, he's played in this system with Clint Kubiak with the Saints. Now, it wasn't a long time. He only played in I think Shaheed got kind of hurt, or he was kind of in and out of the lineup. But he was there for the full year. So he's got a pretty good understanding of how this offense works. I'm sure there were some changes that he's got to get caught up on. But, it's pretty solid that he can kind of really almost be a plug-and-play type guy. Are you using Rashid Shaheed this week? Maybe. Yeah. I don't feel terrible about it. Total is 44.5. There's no weather here in rainy, typical rainy Northwest Seattle. So, yeah, why not? I don't hate it, especially if we're going to miss Torrey Horton or Cooper Kupp, or maybe both guys are out. Sam Darnold, he's an every week fantasy starter. If he's out there in your wire, why? Go pick him up. This is he's getting better and better. Last year was not an anomaly. And Seattle moved off of Geno and got a huge upgrade at quarterback because he's way better than Geno Smith. And now he picks up Rashid Shaheed. AJ Barnes a little bit banged up. That could be big for Elijah Arroyo. He's actually could be a nice streamer this week. Kenneth Walker, he's getting a little bit more usage. Got the goal line looks last week. I mean, they couldn't even give Kenneth Walker goal line carries on his birthday, but then they came out of the bye week and started to give him a little bit more. Kenneth Walker, like if you gave him 20 touches a game or like 25 touches a game, and Seattle probably could do this if they wanted to. Like he could give you 150 yards and 2-3 touchdowns. Give him a couple give him like 3, 4, 5 screens. I mean, he just has that explosive nature to him. But Darnold's playing so damn well. But still, they do have the threat of that passing game that is still a big part of Clint Kubiak to play action. And then Charbonnet, as a flex, you have him on your team. He's probably one of your better running backs. You took him in the 9th round. At the one point, he was going into the 9th round. People were taking him. I wasn't doing it. But, hey, he's been decent as a flex. He's got the biggest cheese ball roll in fantasy. Just run straight. That's all he does, basically. But he's a quality player, good pass protector. So he gets the time. But Kenny Walker, you would hope now that they're past their bye week. They're obviously, he wasn't practicing a lot early in the preseason. Hopefully they start to gear him up a little bit more. Could he's going to, we want to see a Kenneth Walker breakout game. When is it going to happen? I don't know. Maybe it's this week. It's not the best of matchups. 4.3 yards per carry, 6 touchdowns on the ground for the Cardinals. Allowed a $123 to Taylor, but that's Jonathan Taylor. That was only a 100-yard rusher they allowed all year. McCaffrey only had 17 for 52, so not the greatest matchup. But could he have a decent game? You're going to throw him out there in Charbonnet. Jigba, obviously, and then Shaheed, like I said. If Horton and Kupp are both active, you don't feel that great. But if one of these guys is out, I feel a lot better about using Shaheed. So maybe if Kupp and Horton are both out there, maybe I'm trying to keep Shaheed on my bench and waiting and see what it looks like. But if one of the guys are out, especially Horton, although Kupp could play a lot. One of the guys are out, I feel a bit better about it. I'd probably use him. And then Elijah Arroyo is interesting as well. For the Cardinals, Jacoby Brissett's been playing some damn good football. And he's done this in the past. Like he'll look good for 3, 4, 5 games, and then he'll look brutal. And that certainly could happen again. But, he played good against the Colts, almost beat them, played good against Green Bay, played good against Dallas last week. He's getting McBride involved. He's getting Harrison going. He's getting Michael Wilson going. So it's not a terrible play. I just feel like this could be his worst game of the year, though, because this is going to be a tough matchup against the Seattle secondary and pass rush. Like, if I had to choose between him and Mariota this week, I think I might pick Mariota just because of the rushing upside. And plus, they're playing the Lions in a 50 total. Wait, is it a 50 total in that game? Yeah, 50 total. So could Brissett give you 200 yards and 2 touchdowns? Yeah, but he also could give you like 225 and a donut, or maybe just 1 touchdown. And he doesn't run. The running back situation looks like DeMarcado. He's got the higher rushing prop this week. He's kind of taking it from Bam Knight. You'd rather use him than Bam Knight. Trey Benson continues to be out. Michael Carter wasn't even used last week. Forget about him. Harrison, I don't feel good about him in this matchup. His receiving prop is 55 yards. Trey McBride, though, does have a good matchup here. He's the one guy that could shine against Seattle. Seahawks just 23rd against fantasy tight ends. 81 to Cade Otton, 46 to Ertz. 98 to Schultz, 9 for 98 to Schultz, and then 7 for 52 last time in the first matchup against the Cardinals. See what Darnold did in the first matchup against the Cardinals. Cardinals 10th best against fantasy quarterbacks. Darnold wasn't really a great game. 18 of 26 for 242 and a touchdown in Arizona. They've been pretty stingy, actually, the Arizona defense. Gannon's got them playing pretty decent. Bryce Young was actually the one guy that tore him up of all the quarterbacks. Had 300-yard game. Daniel Jones didn't really do much. 212 yards, 2 touchdowns. Dak was held back last week. Jordan Love didn't do anything. So this could be a little bit of a lower scoring game, defensive game. Maybe not the biggest game for Darnold, but he's been so solid. Plus, he picks up Shaheed this week. That's going to help. And he can still throw 2-3 touchdowns, even though his yards may not be a ton. Michael Wilson also could be in play in this game too, but just not a lot of upside. Like I said, I don't even like Harrison that much. Cat Mari, what's up, man? Just catching your question now. Cat Mari 47. Do you like Rome or Marvin Harrison Jr. more going forward? Now, both these guys I felt like were overrated coming into the NFL. I wasn't really high on either of these guys. And I've, believe it or not, the last 2 years I played in 50 leagues. I've only drafted one share, and it was Marvin Harrison Jr. I took him last year in one league, the back end of the first round where he was going, and I instantly felt bad about it. And I stacked them with Kyler Murray and Trey McBride. It wasn't a good team. McBride was good, but Kyler Murray stunk, and obviously Harrison was not good either. But part of Harrison being not that good is because of Kyler Murray. So he always kind of needed it because, Harrison is still a good receiver. I just felt like where he was going last year in drafts was way too high. And even this year, I thought it was a little too high playing with Murray. But if he had a quarterback like Rodgers or Stafford, like his fantasy value would be a lot higher. And Brissett's an upgrade. I mean, we've seen it. So Arizona's schedule, the rest of the way, they get Seattle. Like I said, I don't like that matchup. San Francisco's not bad. Jacksonville's not bad. Tampa is not bad. The Rams is not the best. Houston's tough in the semis. Atlanta, I don't like really either. AJ Terrell. But Super Bowl, Cincinnati. So it's pretty nice. The first round, the first round of the playoffs and the semis, 2 tough matchups. But Cincinnati, if you can get there, Super Bowl. And then the Bears schedule is kind of rough. I actually think like this might be the time to sell your Bears. Sell Caleb, sell Swift, sell Monangai, sell Adunze, sell DJ Moore, sell Colson Love, and look at his schedule. Giants is not bad this week, but then Minnesota. And we just saw what they did to the Lions. Caleb could be just getting massacred in that game. Pittsburgh, we just saw what they did to the Colts. Maybe they turn it around a little bit. We'll see against the Chargers this week. But still, that's another tough pass rush. And then Philly, at Philly. Who knows what the weather's going to be like by then. Then at Green Bay. Then home against Cleveland. Then Green Bay again. And then at San Francisco. So the Bears, they've been kind of skirting by. They may get a win this week. But you could actually say the Bears may lose 5, 6, like they could lose 6 of their last 8 games. Or they play Detroit in week 18 too. So they have like 7 of their last 9 games here. But I just don't like these matchups for them. So I would say I like Marv better, man. I do like Marv better based on schedule. And now that Brissett is the starter. Again, that playoff schedule is not great for Marv. Houston, Atlanta, especially Houston. He'll get erased in that game. Atlanta, he could get erased, but the Super Bowl matchup is juicy. Then after this week, Seattle is not bad. He's got a pretty good 3-game stretch with San Francisco, Jacksonville, Tampa, and the Rams isn't a terrible one. But I don't like the rest of the matchups other than the Super Bowl. But I still think I like it better than Chicago's. And Chicago's going to be playing in some shitty weather. I mean, you got Pittsburgh at home, you got at Philly, at Green Bay. The winds are going to start swirling. We're going to get more rain, sleet. Cleveland at home, Green Bay again. So, we'll see how Caleb performs in these games. We're going to get some shitty weather again. But yeah, I like Marv there, man. So again, looking at the Bears schedule here, I think I'm going to be selling my Bears after this week. Thanks for the question, man. Like, subscribe to the show if you haven't already, man. We do a recap show every Monday. We'll have this show every Thursday night. And then I'm going to be adding a DFS show Friday or Saturday after Thanksgiving. And we'll also have some college basketball stuff coming your way soon, and a little bit NBA as well. So stay tuned for that. Appreciate you, Katamari 47. All right. I think we covered this game pretty good. Let's keep it moving to the next 4 o'clock. Rams at San Francisco. San Francisco won the first matchup. If you remember, Mac Jones was just feeling himself. He's like, the little shoulder shrug meme. 26-23 in overtime. I mean, Mac Jones was on fire. I don't know how the hell he did it. 342 yards, 2 touchdowns. Kendrick Bourne looked like he was on a performance-enhancing drugs. 10 catches for 142 yards. McCaffrey caught 8 balls for 82 yards. Jake Tunges caught 7 for 41 and a touchdown. DeMarcus Robinson 3 for 39. So Bourne has quieted down since then. Juwan Jennings is getting a little bit more healthier now. I feel better about Juwan Jennings more so than Bourne, even though Bourne is Mac Jones' boy. Mac Jones was like, after that game, he was kind of like getting banged up and hobbling around. I feel like he's a little bit healthier now, maybe. Played pretty good last week. McCaffrey was shut down in the first matchup, just 22 for 57 on the ground. For the Rams in that game, Stafford also had a really good game, 389 for 3 touchdowns, threw it 47 times. Adams had 5 for 88. Puka 10 for 85 and a touchdown. Tutu Atwell, who I believe is out for the year, had 2 for 72. Kyler had a big game through the air. Wow. 8 for 66 and 2 touchdowns. Kyler Williams last matchup. What are the Niners allowing on the year to fantasy running backs through the air? Man, not much. Well, Bijan at 52. Woody Marks at 49. So, yeah, maybe Kyron gets it done in the passing game again. That's something they could utilize again. And no Fred Warner, no Bosa. And they just lost their other defensive end, too, their first-round pick. So, I think the Rams get back at them here. I kind of wanted to take the Rams here in the revenge game. But these teams have been playing pretty damn close. So I could see them kind of maybe the Niners covering here at home. I kind of lean the Rams. I'm going to take a Devontae Adams anytime touchdown, minus 120 in this game. I think Adams may score every single week. I mean, he's just such a lethal weapon in the red zone. Like, you just can't cover him one-on-one. You just line him up out wide, and he'll just school the corner every time. And Stafford's the perfect guy to get him the ball. So that Kyron receiving prop is interesting. You expect Kyron to have a nice game. Now he's getting slowed down a little bit. With Corum, get a little bit more work. Kyron's been slowing down a little bit for fantasy. We'll see if CMC has a better game than the first time in this matchup. Again, I like Juwan Jennings. They got Kittle back in this matchup. Mac Jones, I don't mind using. I could see him going 250, 2 touchdowns. Stafford, obviously. Puka's no-brainer. None of the Rams tight ends. They use like 65 different tight ends. Colby Parkinson, Terrence Ferguson, Higbee, Davis Allen. You know, you'd like to see them maybe give Ferguson more of a role, but they're just mixing all these guys in right now. So yeah, it's gonna be a good game to watch. I lean Rams. May bet them at game time, but I'll leave it off the official play. I'm just gonna go with Devontae Adams minus the 120. And Kittle, Juwan Jennings. If you wanted to use Bourne, I don't mind. Obviously, CMC. Brian Robinson actually had a pretty good game. His best game of the year against the Giants last week. Had a couple of good runs. Ran over Deonte Banks. What everybody was saying the Giants were giving up. I don't think the Giants were giving up. I just Brian Robinson just ran that dude over. So you wonder if Brian Robinson gets a little bit more here down the stretch. But can't use him as a flex play just yet. July 12th. What's up, man? Welcome to the show. He says, trade CD and Josh Jacobs for Bucky and Jamar Chase. Well, that's a tough one, man. Because Bucky Irving, we don't know when he's coming back. I mean, I expect maybe one more week. 2 at the most. So what is your record? If you have a winning record and you could afford to do it, you could do it. I mean, I don't think you have to make this trade. You could just roll with CeeDee Lamb and Jacobs the rest of the year. There's a chance that Flacco could get hurt. And we see Jake Browning again. I mean, we were a little concerned about that shoulder last week, but he went out there and balled out again. But yeah, obviously you like Chase over CD. Bucky and Jacobs are probably pretty close. Jacobs is kind of slowing down a little bit. You know, he's kind of lagging along. Again, had a huge workload last year. But I think I would just hold put right now, man. It's too risky. Like, you could make this trade and Bucky could be out 2 more weeks. Again, if you have a winning record and you want to chase the upside, I don't mind doing it. I love Bucky Irving. Obviously, he's playing on a great offense. And you get Jamar Chase, but there's some risk there. You know, again, Flacco could get hurt. Bucky, maybe he comes back, he gets re-injured. You got the 2 healthy guys. If you have a winning record, even, or if you're 500, or you're 9-0. Yeah, I mean, you could do it, man. You're 9-0. So you have the luxury of making a move like that. But do you need to make the deal? I don't think you need to make it. Jamar is a huge jump. I don't know if he's a huge jump. I mean, he's definitely a jump. I don't know if it's a huge jump. Obviously, Chase gives you those monster performances, but CD's going to have some big games on the stretch here. And let's look at the schedule. Dallas get their bye, and then they get Vegas. That's nice. Philly, KC, not the best. But CD's, matchup proof. Detroit's a nice one, high scoring game. Minnesota, Chargers, Washington. So schedule's pretty good there. Bengals also on their bye. Pittsburgh, New England, Baltimore, Buffalo, Baltimore, Miami, Arizona. And then Tampa. Next week, Buffalo, Rams. Not the best. Arizona, New Orleans, Atlanta, Carolina, Miami. That's good. That's a good 4-game stretch at the end there. And then Green Bay, Philly this week. Giants, Minnesota, Detroit, Chicago, Denver, Chicago. Yeah, man. I mean, like I said, I don't think you need to make the deal, but you're 9-0. If you wanted to shoot for it, go with your gut if you want. You're going to get Jamar Chase, obviously. It feels good. And you just hope Bucky comes back next week because it doesn't sound like he's playing this week. But again, Jacobs looks like he's hobbling a little bit too. I just don't think it's a trade you need to make. Maybe you don't want to upset the apple cart. If it's not broke, don't fix it. The usual sayings. But if you wanted to do it, you could swing for the fences. I think, obviously, if everybody's healthy, I do prefer Bucky and Jamar Chase. Smitty, what's up, man? Welcome back once again. Appreciate you joining me late night. Start 2 running backs. David Montgomery, Rachaad White, Breece Hall. I'm going Montgomery and Breece there, man. I don't see a lot of upside for Rachaad White this week. Patriots have a really good run defense. I'm taking his under prop. If you missed that earlier, under 43.5. Now the Patriots have allowed the most receptions to running backs, 55, which I noticed earlier. So Rachaad could catch 4 or 5 balls, maybe for 40, 50 yards. He could give you a 10, 15-point day. And you could maybe say, he's going to be this, he'll be the number 1 guy. But Tucker could mix it. We saw Tucker get the touchdown before the bye. But it's a good spot for Montgomery against the Commanders. That's a game they're going to have a lead in. This could be a Montgomery, 50, 60-yard and a touchdown type game. Both the running backs didn't do much last week, so they're going to really want to get the run game going. Now, their offensive line is a little bit banged up, but the Commanders' season's shot. Daniels is out. Their defense has looked miserable. I would say definitely Breece. If you wanted to choose Rachaad White over Montgomery, I don't hate it. I think they're kind of close. Let me see what the consensus rankings are on Fantasy Pros. Now, I haven't finished my rankings fully yet, but let's see what the industry has here. Rachaad White is 21st overall, and Montgomery is 19th overall. So, yeah, very close. Like I said, I think I prefer Montgomery and then Breece Hall, number 12 overall. So there you go, man. Actually should try to. It's just I'm so swamped with everything. I usually don't get my rankings until like last minute. I got to start getting my rankings in earlier, or at least start to adjust them earlier on. But yeah, that's kind of how I would rank it there, buddy. No problem, July, man. Good luck on the rest of the year. 9-0, man. That is really, really impressive. Hell of a job. Take down that title. Thanks for joining us tonight. Hit that like button if you haven't already. Subscribe to the show, guys. I appreciate everybody joining us tonight here on the Late Night Show. If you guys are on the West Coast, let me know. I'm on the East Coast. If you're on the West Coast, let me know where you're coming from, where you're watching from. Justin 7434 with the basketball picture. We'll have some basketball shows, man, if you're interested. Little NBA stuff, little college basketball for sure, especially as we get closer to the NCAA tournament. But anyway, I traded away A.J. Brown, Breece Hall, and Dallas Goedert and got Justin Jefferson, Gadsden, Justice Hill. So you went from A.J. Brown to Jefferson, Dallas Goedert to Gadsden, but you went from Breece Hall to Justice Hill. You have Bijan and Henry, and Hendo. And you have DK, Marvin, QJ as his other receivers. Yeah, I like the upgrade getting Jefferson over AJB. I think that's an upgrade. Goddard and Gats. I mean, Goddard's been pretty good this year. I mean, he's finally staying healthy. So that's close. You could say Gatson could finish strong down the stretch over Goddard. But I just think you took a big drop there going from Justice Hill from Breece Hall. I think you could have got a little bit more there. Could the trade work out for you still? Because you're deep. I mean, you have Bijan and Henry and Hendo. I just think you gave up Breece for Justice Hill. That's the biggest drop off by far, where the other two are kind of close. I mean, Goddard and Gatson are close, and AJB and Jefferson are close. Even though Jefferson's, I would give the edge over AJB, but yeah, I think he gave up a little too much there, man. Allen is my quarterback. That's beautiful to have. Yeah, I think giving up Hendo would have been the guy for sure. Because Justice Hill, he doesn't do much at all. I mean, you're never going to start him. Even when Henry gets hurt, it's going to be probably Keaton Mitchell getting most of the burn, at least the carries. And Justice Hill, Justice Hill will get a bigger load. But we could see Rashawn Ali come back too. So, yeah, man, don't feel, I mean, you're still okay. It's all good. But, yeah, next time, I would say try to match that up a little bit better. If you could keep both, I would do it. But, yeah, I think Mitchell would be the better guy over Hill if Henry did indeed get hurt. I think he would get the most carries. But it's close. I can't say that with full certainty. It's just the feeling I get. That's why I say try to keep both if you can. If you have another waste spot you could put, or maybe an IR spot, and you could grab Mitchell. But it does make sense if you're a Henry owner to grab Keaton Mitchell if you can. And I would give him the leg up over Hill. But since you traded for Hill, I wouldn't want to drop him if you didn't have to. But I appreciate it, Justin. Come back next time. Monday, we'll have a recap show. We'll be here every Thursday night after the Thursday night game. And we're going to add a DFS show again. We'll have basketball shows in the future as well. So hit that like button, that subscribe button if you haven't already. I really, really appreciate you guys. All right. And you can follow me on X at Fantasy Savvy. I believe I finished up this Niners game. Pretty much covered everything here. Let's get to the last 4 o'clock. And then we will get into the Sunday night and the Monday night, and we'll get the heck out of here. Detroit, Washington. No more Jaden Daniels. Ugly dislocated elbow on his non-throwing arm. So he could be back this year. But Commanders' season could be in the tank, and they might just want to keep him out the rest of the year because that could be something that he could re-aggravate, obviously. If he's going to be like in a sling, I mean, it looked ugly, man. I mean, I'm sure they put it back in place, but, it's something that it could just be really tender. Maybe he's out a month. Maybe he comes back after a month. We'll have to see, but they could shut him down. That is possible too. We'll just have to wait and see. But Mariota steps in. He's been pretty decent in the absence of Jaden Daniels as a Commander. Now, Mariota was terrible with the Falcons when he was playing over there, but better in this Cliff Kingsbury system. Now, this system seems like it's getting figured out a little bit. The Commanders had a great season last year. It's been disastrous this year with the injuries. Again, I think the system's being figured out. No Terry McLaurin. That's rough. Even Luke McCaffrey, I think, has showed some flashes. He's hurt with a collarbone injury. Bill has been terrible. Chris Rodriguez, who I think is Benny Snell 2.0, has looked better than him. Jerry McNichols, who's like the poor man Zach Charbonnet on this team, has looked almost better than him. So you can't use Bill anymore. Zach Ertz is not bad in this matchup in a 50 total. Debo he's been bad the past couple of weeks after having a strong start to the season. But in a 50 total, you don't hate it. Lions 12th best against tight ends. But, Ertz is not a bad option. Lions 24th against receivers. 128 to Rome and 2 touchdowns. 110 to Chase and 2 touchdowns. 82 to Andre Yoshivas. 4 for 45 and 2 to Hollywood Brown. Tez Johnson, 4 for 58 and a touchdown. So, yeah, Debo, the ceiling doesn't seem great, but again, they're going to have to throw a ton. Mariota's going to throw a ton. So Debo, not a terrible start. Might be more like a wide receiver 3 flex play, though, in this game. than anything. Shout out to the Philly Pod. What's up, man? Appreciate you checking me out on Twitch. First time popping in. Hit a like if you can, man. If you also too, if you watch on YouTube, check out my show there on Fantasy Savvy. Hit a like over there as well. But appreciate everybody coming in tonight. Catching a lot of people on Twitch late night, which is always good. But yeah, Debo, not a bad play. You're not using any of these Washington running backs. Ertz, and then Mariota is not a bad streamer. Like I think Mariota has been giving you 15, 20 points, a little bit over 20 since he's been starting here in Washington. And this is a spot where he could have 20 points again. Could throw a couple touchdowns. Again, 50 total. He's going to have to throw a ton. 7.5 point underdogs. So if 49.5 total, I think he'll give you 20 points this game. Not a bad streamer. Again, I compared him to Jacoby Brissett. I like his matchup better here than Jacoby Brissett. I feel like he could have a better fantasy day than Jacoby Brissett because of the rushing upside. Now, let's see where the Lions are at against fantasy quarterbacks. Just 24th. Jake Browning, week 5. Now, they're a little bit more banged up at that time, but threw for 251, 3 touchdowns, ran for 31 yards. McCarthy threw for 2 touchdowns. They did slow down Baker. They did a good job on Baker, so that's concerning. They have been a little bit better, the Lions, and their pass rush is starting to get going a little bit too. But I think Mariota could run for 30, maybe 40 yards, possibly run one in, possibly throw one. So I think his floor is pretty safe. Again, the total is enough where I think that he can give you a decent fantasy day. Now, could Mariota underwhelm? 100%. But it's a bye week. No Mahomes this week. No Dak this week. You gotta, there can be some desperate situations. Mariota is not a terrible, terrible option for the Lions. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Guy asked earlier, who should I trade Amon-Ra St. Brown for? Why trade this guy? He's just an automatic start every single week, regardless of matchup. Been fantasy gold, ever since that slow start to his rookie year, came on down the stretch, was on fire and hasn't looked back. And the Commanders, 4th worst against fantasy receivers. Their defense has looked absolutely lost. CeeDee Lamb went for $110. Jackson Smith and the Jigba went for 129. And Drake London went for 110. Trey Tucker, 8 catches for 145 and 3 touchdowns. So I actually not only like Amon-Ra, J-Mo, there was some talk. They were going to use him. The offensive coordinator, John Morton, said they were going to start utilizing him more. He had a nice game last week. Not a huge game, but gets into the end zone. And I think J-Mo could have his best game of the year here. I have one prop here. J-Mo, 100 yards receiving. I don't think J-Mo's had a 100 yards receiving game yet this year. Maybe one. But I think it really could come here. Now, this could be a game where they're in control. They may not have to throw a lot. So maybe this is not the spot for J-Mo. He did have a 100-yard game against the Bears on 2 catches, had that 64-yard catch, but he could do something similar here. I'm going to go with it. J-Mo, 100-yard game, plus 650, 6.5 to 1. Very good odds. Actually have quite a few plays in this game. I'm going to go Lions -8. I just think the Commander season is shot. We've seen, everybody always talks about the Lions and Jared Goff only good on, at home, or that's kind of when Goff goes off. But Goff's had 2 good games on the road on grass fields this year. One against Baltimore, putting up 38, and then also against Cincinnati. Everybody kills Cincinnati, but still 37 points. So, goes to Washington. I think Goff's going to have a good game. Now, their offensive line's a little bit banged up, but the Commanders' defense is just, they're not playing good football. Allowed 38 to freaking Sam Darnold, 44 to Dak, 25 to Caleb, 34 to Atlanta, 28 to the Chiefs. So I think the Lions are just going to have their way. Gibbs and Montgomery should have nice bounce back games after a bad week. You're getting Laporta involved. And again, for the Commanders, Debo and Mariota streaming if you need to, and maybe Zach Ertz, and I'm not using the rest of the guys. Forget about the other receivers, Jalen Lane. Who the hell knows? That's it. But a couple more plays in this game, guys. Lions -8, Gibbs over 69.5 rushing yards. We're going to go back to it after last week's disaster. JMO over 44.5 receiving yards, and then the JMO ladder 100 receiving yards plus 650. Philly Pod says just traded Brees and Waddle for Achane and Adunze. I don't know how motivated Brees is going to be after not getting traded. Won't want to risk injury before free agency. Buying low on Adunze, has a nice remaining schedule. Yeah. I think you're taking a downgrade there going from Waddle to Adunze, but you definitely get an upgrade getting Achane over Brees. And Adunze could be solid. He's not going to, I don't think he'll be as good as Waddle, but I do feel safer having Achane over Brees. I think Brees is going to be fine, though. I think he's a good dude. I don't think he's not going to give all-out effort out there. Aaron Glenn's going to keep him motivated. The rest of the teammates and stuff will keep him motivated. I don't think he was requesting a trade just because all the other guys moved. Like, they're acting like all these other guys were moving, and he's like ran into the building, said, trade me. But, I don't mind it. I don't think Rome's schedule is actually that great, though. Minnesota, Pittsburgh aren't terrible, but Philly, Green Bay, Cleveland, Green Bay isn't great. Although Green Bay may not be bad. And then you got to think about the weather, too. And then at San Francisco for the Super Bowl isn't bad. But, it's Caleb's guy. He'll probably be their best receiver down the stretch, even though I think DJ Moore is better than Adunze. They just don't use DJ Moore the right way. I mean, we saw DJ Moore have 1,300 yards with Justin Fields, but they're just not using him. And I don't think, Caleb could really support two guys that much anyway. So, yeah, Rome will be okay. I don't think he'll be as good as Waddle, but I do think, picking up Achane over Brees is pretty good. Brees is going to have some games where, he doesn't do much because the Jets offense is just going to be slowed down. But I do think Brees will be pretty decent and have some strong games the rest of the way. So not a bad trade, brother. Who's the better QB start, Baker or Stafford? Stafford has been money this year throwing to Devontae Adams with the addition of Devontae Adams. And then obviously Puka, big upgrade from going from Cooper Kupp to Devontae Adams. Rams matchup against San Francisco this week. Against Stafford, threw for 3 touchdowns and 300 yards last time against San Francisco. Baker is home against New England. It's actually a pretty high total. But I like Stafford over Baker, man. I'm going to go Stafford this week in a revenge game. Philly Pod says he trusts Caleb more than Tua. I don't know, man. Caleb hasn't been that great. I know Tua's, but I don't blame you. Caleb should be able to get better. We've kind of seen Tua, man. He's regressing almost. No Tyreek now. But their schedule actually is pretty good. I remember from what I remember down the stretch, Miami. Let's see. Buffalo this week's not great, but Washington, then you get the bye. But New Orleans, Jets, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, Tampa is pretty nice. I actually like that better than Chicago's. And Could get some bad weather games there for Tua, which could be kind of ugly though. The Jets in Pittsburgh, might be kind of shitty weather games. We'll see, but still not bad matchups. And then New Orleans at home, Cincinnati at home is great in the semis, and then Tampa, at home too. So those are all good weather games. Actually, I actually think Tua might not have a bad stretch here, man. So that's a close one. Um, Caleb has his own struggles. It's got to start being a little more accurate. Our boy Scott Colby, fellow high stakes player. What's up, my man? Hey, Steve, what's up? I have May, Darnold, and Stafford. Which one to start? This is a no trade league. Darnold, again, he wasn't great in that first matchup. We went over that earlier. Stafford threw for 300 and 3 touchdowns in the last matchup against San Francisco. And, I think Fred Warner was in that first matchup. They don't have Fred Warner anymore. And they just lost their first round pick at the end as well. Seattle wasn't, Darnold wasn't that great. I think they played in week 4, just 1 touchdown against Arizona. Arizona's defense isn't terrible. Cooper Kupp, questionable. Torrey Horton, questionable. How much will Shaheed play? Darnold has become an every week starter. And then you got Drake May against Tampa. That's close. I think for me, man, it's either May or Stafford. I think I would go with Stafford against San Fran. He'll probably have 250, probably 3 touchdowns again. With Devontae Adams now, it's just been money in the red zone with him and Stafford. It's taken away from Kyron a little bit. But if you wanted to go May, I don't mind that either. I think he'll give you at least 20. Stafford should give you at least 20. I think Darnold is the one guy I could see having a little bit of a down game, possibly. But again, he could give you 22. So you have 3 really good options there, man. I just think I would go Stafford and then May or May over Stafford, but I just trust Stafford the most with those 2 options there. I don't think San Francisco is going to be able to slow him down. And we're getting the totals in those games. New England, Tampa, 48. Arizona, Seattle, 45.5. And then LA, San Francisco, 49. So, yeah, I would go with the Rams in the revenge game and Stafford there, brother. Again, no weather in any of those games. Nothing to be concerned about either. The only temperatures, but yeah, that shouldn't be anything to slow down the offenses. Maybe a couple snow flurries. But appreciate you hopping in, Scott. The Philly pod again says, should I go McCarthy or Mariota this week? Encouraged by McCarthy, has better weapons, still getting up to NFL speed. I'm going McCarthy. Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good pickup by you. I think McCarthy is going to be a nice fantasy asset down the stretch. Again, I've said this a million times. Look at what O'Connell's done with Nick Mullins and Josh Dobbs, and even accelerating Sam Darnold's career last year. And yeah, I like it. High total game for the Vikings against the Ravens. Lamar could have them in a lead. It's going to be a back and forth game. Great weapons. Again, O'Connell didn't have Jordan Addison in those first 2 games and didn't have Darisaw in week 2. Had Darisaw last week. Darisaw is like the Trent Williams. If he doesn't have Darisaw, I don't think you want to use McCarthy. But when he has Darisaw, he's got that protection. He's such a monster left tackle. So yeah, I like McCarthy for sure, and he has that rushing upside, just like Mariota. But All right, we're back. I don't know what happened there, guys, but thanks for sticking with me. Lost connection for a second. Um, but yeah, man, I'd go McCarthy there, 100%. Smitty's back. Do you see any starting quarterback being benched in the next 3 weeks? Um, I guess Fields is possible. I mean, he's kind of it's close. I don't think he's going to get benched. I think he's going to start playing better down the stretch here, but it's possible it could happen. Any other quarterbacks? Let's see. Flacco, possibly he could get hurt. I don't think he'll get benched. Obviously, that's not going to happen. Well, he could get benched for Joe Burrow. Yeah, not for Jake Browning. Baker's not getting benched. Cam Ward, they're not going to bench him. Mariota's got the job with Daniels out. They're not going to move off of him. There's a chance Shuck, they could go back to Rattler if he's proves hideous, but I kind of think Shuck's going to hold the job. Geno Smith could get benched for Pickett. That's possible. Shedeur Sanders, another one. That's another guy you could see step up over Dylan Gabriel. I actually think that's going to happen. So, yeah, I would say the one that I think is we're going to see is Shedeur Sanders. And possibly Geno Smith could get benched too. But he might just hold that job because they're paying him. And Kenny Pickett stinks. So I think Shedeur Sanders is probably the one. I don't see any others out there. All right. So Lions, Washington, I think we cleaned that one up. Let's talk about Sunday Night Football. Pittsburgh at the Chargers. Chargers favor by 1.5. Total is 44.5. Seems kind of low to me. I mean, Pittsburgh's defense played great last week. Chargers defense is starting to play a little bit more better ball, but did allow 20 to the Titans. Yeah, they shut down Wentz. 10 points. Wentz's arm was falling up. It allowed 38 before that. Allowed 27 to Miami. I don't know why this total is so low. It's kind of a little weird to me. Pittsburgh's defense hasn't been good until last week. And the Chargers offensive line is really banged up. So maybe the odds makers are saying, the Chargers are going to struggle here. But we just saw, Alec Pierce have 100 yards, Michael Pittman have 100 yards. So even if Herbert doesn't have a lot of time, I still think he's going to be able to sling it here. I like the over. I think this game is going over to 43. I like Ladd over 62.5 receiving yards. Quentin Johnson over 40.5. Jalen Warren anytime touchdown plus 110. Darnell Washington was getting into the mix last week. He looks like, that guy's he's a monster out there, and he has really good hands too. So but you never know like what the hell they're going to do with these tight ends. 1 week it's Freiermuth, 1 week it's John, and 1 week it's freaking Darnell Washington. John, who did have a drop last week. I tend to think it's going to kind of be Freiermuth and Washington the rest of the way. And John, Artie Smith's boy, may take a little bit of a step back. But yeah, let's go Darnell Washington over 13.5. Also over 1.5 catches, minus 140. Arondé Gadsden over 46.5 receiving yards. So I like a lot here. I think the Chargers and these receivers are going to get it going. Herbert and his receivers. Even if Herbert gets sacked a ton, I like the over. I like Jalen Warren getting into the end zone. The Chargers have been allowing a lot of rushing touchdowns to running backs. 8 on the year. They allowed 3 to Taylor, 2 to Devin Achane, 2 to Krosky Merritt. J.K. Dobbins had a touchdown against them. They're allowing 4.9 yards per carry, Warren didn't have a big day on the ground last week, but had 2 touchdowns. They're still kind of using him on the goal line. They're not using Caleb Johnson yet. Are they going to ever use Caleb Johnson? Probably not, as long as Warren and Gainwell keep producing. Gainwell looks good when he gets his touches. But yeah, like Rodgers to utilize the tight ends again. And to answer your question there, Scott, what on the earth is wrong with DK Metcalf? I just think it's almost like an Artie Smith thing. He just loves the tight ends. They play the 12, 13 personnel. They want to run the football. Rodgers is throwing a lot of underneath stuff. They're not really going down deep to DK Metcalf. His ADOT is way down. So it's frustrating, again, Rodgers loves throwing to these freaking tight ends. Darnell Washington, man, like he's kind of fun to watch. He's a huge dude, and he's got like great hands. And then Freiermuth too is a good weapon too. So yeah, no, it is frustrating. Calvin Austin's kind of in the way. I thought Roman Wilson's was going to step up, and then he didn't really get the usage. And then he had that fumble and that stupid play. It's so funny watching Rodgers, man. He looks pissed off. Like every time they don't complete a pass or like something goes wrong, he just looks like he blames it on his teammates every single time. But yeah, DK in this matchup against the Chargers, not the best. Chargers third to receivers, allowing the third least most points to fantasy receivers. They haven't allowed a 100-yard receiver all year. So I think it's more about the tight ends. The Chargers have actually been leaking the tight ends more so, a little bit more so. No, actually they haven't. I'm sorry. They're only fifth most allowed. But I do like the freaking Darnell Washington prop over 13.5 and the over 1.5 catches. I just think he's going to get it done. And then the Warren anytime touchdown. I think that's definitely happening in this game. And then Ladd and Quentin J over 40.5 for QJ, and then Ladd over 62.5. Again, we saw Pittman and Pierce go for 100-yard each. I think these guys are going to have pretty good days. I think the total is going to go over as well. Let's just hope that Herbert's offensive line isn't a complete disaster. I know they brought over that guy Penning to fill in for Joe Alt. I know he hasn't been good, but the other guy they had in last week looked terrible. Hopefully this guy's an upgrade. And then this game's tough to call. I could see Pittsburgh winning. I could see the Chargers winning. I would lean Chargers here, but I'm just going to go with the over total in this game. Skedana on Twitch says Fannin versus the Jets or Henry versus Tampa. I don't think Fannin's going to play. He didn't practice. He's got a late hammy injury. So I think you got to go with Henry there, Skedana. Appreciate the question. Kobe says Pittsburgh doesn't give up the deep ball. So watch Quentin Johnson. Anytime touchdown might be a good bet. Yeah, agree. That's another one. And like I said earlier, Scott, I like QJ over 40.5 receiving yards. We'll see if they get a ton of pressure on Herbert and it kind of slows him up. But you know how Herbert is. Even when he's getting freaking rushed a million times, he still finds a way to get it off, evade pressure, and he's got good weapons. Not to mention Keenan Allen as well. So, I like the over. Quite a few props in this game. Appreciate everybody joining me tonight. Like, subscribe, share if you haven't already. You guys are the best. We got one more game here, Monday Night Football. And then we'll get out of here. We'll get some sleep. These Thursday night shows don't help to sleep too much. And we got the London game. Can't even sleep in on Sunday anymore. Got to get ready with our lineups early for these London games. But Philly, Green Bay. Last game of the week. Interesting game. Philly getting 1.5, 2 points on the road in Lambeau. These two teams played last year in the playoffs. Philly wins 22-10 in Philly. In that game, Hurts had 131 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. Saquon, 119 yards rushing. Devonta Smith, 4 for 55. Dallas Goedert, 4 for 47. A.J. Brown, just 1 for 10. I think he may have got hurt in that game. I don't remember. Jordan Love, just 20 of 33, 212 yards. Jacobs, 18 for 81 and a touchdown. Jaden Reed, 4 for 46. Obviously, Jaden Reed sounds like they could get him back by the end of the month. So now would be the time to add Jaden Reed. Sounds like it's either going to be week 13 or week 14. So yeah, if you could stash him on your IR or even the leagues that Scott and I play in where we have deep benches like 10-man, now might be the time to stash Jaden Reed. Did want to mention, actually, I forgot, you know what, the last game, I didn't even mention the running backs for the Chargers. Kamani Vidal kind of, really upset a lot of fantasy owners last week. And we saw Jarrett Patterson kind of close that game out. So I don't know how good I feel about freaking Kamani Vidal in this matchup. And it's not even really a great matchup on paper either against the Steelers. Steelers are 4th best against fantasy running backs, and Jarrett Patterson might be in the way. So, yeah, I would leave Kamani Vidal on your bench if you can. And even Jarrett Patterson is not a bad pickup in a deeper league. But just wanted to mention that before I got fully into this Green Bay Philly game. So, yeah, last matchup there in the playoffs. They also met in 2024. Philly winning 34-29 early in the season. Actually, wasn't that the Brazil game? That might have been the Brazil game where Jordan Love was like slipping all over the place and hurt his MCL. Hurts had 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. Barkley, another 100-yard game. A.J. Brown had a big game in that, 5 for 119. And then Love was 260, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. Josh Jacobs, 16 for 84. Jaden Reed had a monster game. Yeah, that was the Sao Paulo game to open up the season last year. But anyway, this game here, Monday Night Football, Jordan Love, he's hard to trust. He looks good one game, like against Pittsburgh. Looked like he may have turned the corner. Then looks like absolute dog shit against the Panthers last week. He still likes to throw off his back foot way too much. Just 273 yards, no touchdowns, and the pick. Jacobs had a good game, 87 yards and a touchdown. Dobbs has been his favorite receiver, 7 for 91. Christian Watson has come back and has been a force. He caught a big bomb early in that game, but just 2 for 58, had a better game the week prior. But, I don't mind using Christian Watson. Dobbs would be the preferred guy if I'm using one of these Green Bay receivers. Nobody else. I don't know why they're using Malik Heath and Savion Williams. Just forget about these guys. Tucker Kraft and his enormous injury. I mean, it's just a brutal blow. Like I mentioned earlier, I have a ton of Tucker Kraft, and I do have a lot of Harold Fannin, who's also probably going to miss this week. 2 of my most highly owned tight ends. Luke Musgrave, does he step in and do something here? I'm not expecting a ton from Luke Musgrave. I know he was drafted higher than Tucker Kraft in the draft, but I always like Tucker Kraft more. I don't think we should expect Luke Musgrave to match Tucker Kraft's production. Can he be decent? Sure. I'm not going to be overly excited about it. Eagles are 3rd best against tight ends, so I don't really want to use them here. I would use Dobbs. I would use Christian Watson. We got a decent total in this game, 45. Actually, it's kind of low. Oh, great. So Watson and Dobbs aren't thrilling. It's not a great matchup really either for them. I don't really trust Jordan Love in this game either. Eagles have added some more weapons to their defense. Getting Jalen Phillips from Miami now. So they're actually not a bad ad down the stretch here, and I wouldn't even mind streaming them this week against Jordan Love and the Packers. Eagles 13th against fantasy wide receivers, 110 to CD, 112 to Puka, 100 to Abuka, 99 to Sutton, 128 to Addison. So, yeah, I mean, Dobbs is not bad. Give you 5 for 60. Maybe Christian Watson catches a couple big bombs. Love doesn't mind chucking up to Christian Watson and taking shots. We saw him hit Watson early in the game, and then he took a shot later on. It was just a horrible throw. It was like triple coverage he threw into. That's what Love does. He throws off his back foot, makes stupid mistakes. This is actually not a bad matchup for Josh Jacobs. Probably the best matchup out of all the Packers. Eagles 22nd against fantasy running backs. Haven't allowed a 100-yard rusher, but allowed Cam Scott about 3 touchdowns on the ground. Jordan Mason got in the end zone against them in week 7. Kyron went for 94 yards. Javonte in week 1 had 2 touchdowns against them as well. So, yeah, Jacob's not bad here. Obviously, you're going to be using him. And then for Philly, A.J. Brown, you're obviously using him, but I don't think you're expecting a ton here. The Packers are going to be fired up. Micah Parsons is going to be coming here on Monday night. I think I prefer Devonta Smith over A.J. Brown here. Where are the Packers against fantasy receivers? 17th overall on the year. 134 and 2 touchdowns to Pickens. 10 for 94 and a touchdowns against Chase. 4 for 74 and a touchdown against Roman Wilson. 4 for 46 last week against Ted McMillan. 2 for 58 against Harrison. 5 for 62 against T. Higgins. 4 for 61 against Jalen Tolbert. So, not a terrible matchup for A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. I don't know how much I'm really expecting. I think Devonta has the bigger game. I actually am going to go with the Devonta prop in this game, over 48.5. I'm also going to take Philly plus the 2. Could I see Green Bay having a bounce back game here after the Panthers? For sure. But I just trust the Philly defense, and I trust Hurts and Saquon. And I don't trust Jordan Love right now against this Philly defense. I don't think he's going to pull something out of his hat. So that's why I'm going to take the points here with Philly. Dallas Goedert. We saw him have a big game here against the Packers in the playoffs last year. And the Packers are 27th worst against fantasy tight ends. 6 for 64 against Ertz, 6 for 79 against Laporta, 7 for 40 and a touchdown against Jake Ferguson, 10 for 74 and 2 against McBride. Again, all good tight ends, but Dallas Goedert's a good tight end. He's had a really good year. If he continues to stay healthy, he's going to have a career season. That's been Dallas Goedert's main problem. He gets hurt every single year, plays like 12, 13 games. So I like Dallas Goedert here. I actually would take that prop as well. Skednut says, good. Thank you. I have Fannin as my backup tight end. Saw the news, so picked up Henry off waivers to slide him in for the week. For the rest of the season, who would you rather keep? For the rest of the season, who would you keep? Kelsey is my go-to. He's brought me consistent points. I think I like Fannin over Henry the rest of the year. And actually, Fannin could be your best tight end the rest of the way too. But now he's got a hammy, so it's kind of concerning. But I would hold Fannin though. I wouldn't drop him or anything. And again, if he's healthy, I think he could be your number one tight end. I would say Fannin and Kelsey. Kelsey obviously could be better. Yeah, he's been pretty consistent for sure. All right, anything else on this Philly Green Bay game before we get out of here? Let's talk about Saquon's matchup against the Packers. Packers 7th best against fantasy running backs, but Saquon's had some success, 200-yard games in the last 2 matchups. They just allowed Rico Dowdle to go for 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. So, yeah, Saquon could have a nice game here. Starting to get it going a little bit. Had that huge revenge game against the Giants before the bye week. He's fresh, ready to go. That's another thing. Philly's coming off the bye. I like starting running backs coming off the bye. So if you wanted to go with a Saquon prop actually in this game, I kind of like it along with the Dallas Goedert as well. But we'll finish it up with the Eagles +2 and the Devonta over 48.5 receiving yards. So to recap my picks for week 10, again, on the year, we started in week 7. We usually start at the beginning of the year, but I started late this year. 14-12 on the sides in total, 17-20 on the props, but we're on the plus side because it took a lot of plus props. Most of the props we take are plus, and we take a lot of, 2 touchdown props and anytime touchdown props, of which plus odds. So still looking good overall. So this week we got Falcons +6.5. Daniel Jones with an interception -105. Vikings +4. JJ McCarthy over 210 passing yards. And you guys could use this for your DFS and also for your start sits as well. Rashad White under 43.5 rushing yards. Jaguars, Houston under 37.5. Jets +2. Garrett Wilson over 55.5 receiving yards. Brees over 68.5 rushing yards. Best bet would be Fields over 35.5 rushing yards. Now healthy. I think he's going to run a little bit more design runs for him here in this game. Giants +4.5 against the Bears. Dart over 40.5 rushing yards. Caleb over 16.5 rushing yards. Could do a same game parlay there. Miami at the Bills. Kincaid over 41.5 receiving yards. Malik Washington over 27.5 receiving yards. Rams at 49ers. At Devontae Adams anytime touchdown -120. This guy might score a touchdown every week the rest of the way. Lions at Commanders. Lions -8. Gibbs over 69.5 rushing yards to get back on track from last week. JMO, not only over on the 44.5 receiving yards, but let's go JMO 100 receiving yards +650. His second 100-yard receiving game of the year. Sunday Night Football. Pittsburgh at Chargers over 43. Ladd over 62.5 receiving yards. Quentin over 40.5 receiving yards. Warren anytime touchdown +110. Darnell Washington over 13.5 receiving yards. Darnell Washington over 1.5 catches -140. Gatson over 46.5 receiving yards. Again, Pittsburgh allowing a lot of receiving yards. And I think those 3 guys will have all good games now. Let's hope that Herbert doesn't completely collapse with the way Pittsburgh's pass rush looked last week against Danny Penny's looked like last week. And then that Herbert offensive line needs to step up with all those injuries. Hopefully, Mekhi Becton shows up in this game. Monday Night Football, Philly +2, and then Devonta over 40.5. Don't mind Saquon props either, and Dallas Goedert props. That will do it. Thanks, everybody, for joining us tonight. Fantasy Savvy on X. Make sure you guys are liking, subscribing, and sharing. 2 hours and 23 minutes. Week 10. All the best. Have a great week. God bless everybody. Enjoy the games.